is really one of the most amazing, rich, and original thinkers in the Reform movement. There are very few rabbis that publish books today that are congregational rabbis, and very, very few that have the depth and the ability to touch the soul as Karyn does. She's the senior rabbi of B'nai Yehoshua Beth Elohim congregation, and she and Rabbi Gibson and I were all in school together at HUC, and her books include recently Amen, Seeking Presence with Poetry, Prayer, Mindfulness Practice, God Whispers, Stories of the Soul, The Dance with God. It used to be The Dance with Dolphins, yes. The Bridge to Forgiveness, and the book for tonight about counting the Omer. And so you all, we get an intimate group tonight, and at times we it's like feel badly, which I do, that we didn't have more people in attendance, but very often there's a magic with intimate groups. When I was in New York, we had a confirmation class of 5 young people. 4 of the most popular and socially adept young ladies in their high school, and 1 gentleman who was very bright, played tennis, but was on the not socially engaging spectrum. And for him to have an opportunity to be present with those young women for a year was an incredible time for all of them. And with that, let me again welcome Rabbi Kedar.
Thank you. So am I the popular girl, or am I the one that's socially awkward in the story?
You are the most popular of the popular.
I totally was not that girl. Believe it or not. Hello, everybody. Welcome. If you can turn on your video, that would make the group even more intimate and more appealing. I appreciate it if you can. And if you can't, we certainly understand. There you are. Certainly understand, but it makes it better if we can see each other. Do you all know each other? I wonder. Not so much, yes?
We don't know. I don't know Ellen.
Oh, Ellen, because I saw your name. Your name is written backwards, so I had a hard time finding you. Okay, well, hopefully, because it is such a small group, we can make this somewhat of a discussion. I would really love it. I know it can be awkward in Zoom to have a discussion, but I would love to be able to be able to do that. So. Tammy, you put that in the waiting room.
Thank you. I will fix that.
Not a problem. We're going to be talking about the Omer, and I'll be referencing quite a bit this book, which is a book that I wrote. It's not my latest book, the book before that. And as Tammy put in the chat now, I'm offering my 2 latest books, the Omer book and Amen, at a discount if you want to just email me, and I can also sign it since we have some copies here in the office, and then we'll send them out to you. You can email Leslie, who works with me, and she can facilitate that. Less money than going on Amazon. So the Omer is a period of time that starts during Passover and ends at Shavuot. It is 49 days and 7 weeks. And the commandment is to count 49 days and 7 weeks. Today is the first day of the Omer. Today is the second day of the Omer. Today is 1 week and 2 days of the Omer. Every single day, you're supposed to count the Omer. And in counting of the Omer, there are 3 different levels of understanding. So in every holiday or every ritual, we have 3 different levels. One is historical, one is agricultural or connected somehow to the land, and the third is spiritual. So the first level, historical, again, it's that period that how we leave Egypt in a moment of constriction, wander through the desert, and come to Shavuot, which is a moment of expanse. Passover, the holiday of freedom. So we're grateful to be free, but Judaism teaches us that freedom means nothing if it doesn't have a framework. And so Shavuot is the holiday in which the Torah was given. And so this freedom is now put in the context of Torah, which are basically the ethics and the laws of and the mitzvot that you are supposed to do. And so it's not anything that you ever really wanted to do. The Omer was also agriculturally a measure of barley, and so a measure of wheat. And so it went from one harvest to the next. You might remember Shavuot takes place during a harvest time. When we read the book of Ruth, we read about harvest. So that's the connection to the land. And the Kabbalists made it a very elaborate Kabbalistic theme. But in my book, I decided not to go along the Kabbalist way, and I decided to ask this question: what spiritual practice do I need or would help me go from a sense of constriction, personal enslavement, to a sense of freedom and expanse? What are the steps that I can take to make that happen? And so the book is divided into 7 themes. And in each of the books and under each of the themes, we have different readings and the blessing to be counting. But what I want to do with us tonight is I want to go over each of the 7 steps of the spiritual principles, which I think are really a very powerful roadmap. So the first week is dedicated to decide, the second to discern, the third to choose, the fourth to hope, the 5th week, imagine, the 6th week, courage, and the 7th week, pray. And if I can figure out how to go through each of those 7 spiritual principles and really incorporate them into my life, then I feel that I can find a greater expanse and equilibrium. So we're going to go over, for the time that is left, each of those 7 spiritual principles and talk a little bit about what they mean to us. Are there any questions before I go on? Questions, comments? Have you ever heard of the Omer before?
Yeah.
Yeah?
They better. We count the Omer every Friday night.
You're counting every Friday night, the Omer? That's wonderful. Okay, so why do I begin with decide? Sure, you've never really thought of decision as a spiritual principle. Why is decision a spiritual principle? Any step towards change, any step towards self-improvement, any step towards evolving as a human being begins with the decision to do so. You have to decide to do so. It seems rather obvious and it seems rather silly in some ways, but it really, really isn't. And not only is decision a powerful spiritual principle, But the way decision works is that you have to decide again and decide again and decide again. It's not like you decide once and then all of a sudden you're different. So let's take an issue. Maybe you're feeling anxious and you want to stop feeling anxious. Or maybe you have a little bit of a temper and you don't want to have a temper anymore. Or maybe you're just really bored and confused and you want to become enlivened again. Or maybe you're frightened a lot and you don't want to be frightened anymore. Or maybe you're terribly shy and you really do want to become more out into the world. Or maybe you always are feeling guilty and therefore giving too much because of a sense of guilt. Did I catch anybody's issue yet? I could go on. You could go on. I've caught some of my issues, right? Issues. Well, it's not like you just wake up one morning and then you decide, okay, I get that I'm a little angry and I snap at people too much. I'm impatient. I'm going to decide today never to do that again. How would that work for you? I'm going to decide today for the rest of my life to be better with my eating. Or kinder to my body. More attentive to my parents. Or forgive my children. So decision is something that you do over and over and over again. And what's so fascinating about it is once you actually go ahead and make the decision to do that one thing, it's almost as if the universe provides for you a temptation or an obstacle, as if to say, yeah, well, decide again. Decide again. Decide again. So and you can't decide at all. As I gave this litany of issues that any one of us could work on, many of them, right? So it's probably impractical to think, well, tomorrow I'm going to be a righteous person. I decide I'm going to be a righteous person, and all those issues that I talked about are going to disappear. Better to take a step down the path of one thing, that if you were to touch that one thing and you would decide, an opening there would be a clearing in the thicket. So I want you to take a second, since we're such a small group, and I see some of you are writing, and maybe a couple of you will be brave enough in the chat to just not commit necessarily, but just to decide right now, if you were to pick one thing that would expand your life, make you more loving, kinder, make you more you, make you more the person you really want to be, what would that one thing do? What would that one change be? Anybody want to share? Thank you, Laura, for sharing. How about somebody else? I'm also going to share. Anybody else? Trusting. Patient, anxious, trusting. That's beautiful, Joe. This is an exercise I sometimes do. Municipal presence. Be better for the body. I got that one too, particularly coming out of COVID. I think we've lost our way with our bodies in COVID. So many of us, it seems to be a national pastime. This is an exercise I do in a slightly different way during Rosh Hashanah. What's your word? What word is it that you want to contemplate over the course of the year? But it's also good here. So let's just take those things that you have written in and been so trusting, and I appreciate you writing them in. and talk about that is going to be your decision. I decide that I'm going to be more patient, kinder to my body, more loving, less anxious. These things sometimes are best to be taught more trusting in the positive. So instead of saying less anxious, I wonder what the positive way to put that one. Maybe the opposite of less anxious is more trusting. We'll see. And I'll offer you this as we move from to decide. I'm going to offer you this prayer, more relaxed, which is at the end of week 1. That I offer this prayer, and I'll say it twice so that you can really take it in. You might want to just sort of really listen and close your eyes so that you can take it in. And like I said, I'll read it twice. Today I decide to turn my eyes toward wonder so that I may see the expanse before me. Today I decide to see the possibility of my life so that I may open my mind to greatness. Today I will do one kindness so that my heart may be more loving. Today I will pause to consider so that my life may become more deliberate. Help me, dear God, to step firmly upon a path of consequence so that I may make my life a prayer of goodness and mercy, splendor and light. I ask for a life of meaning, a sense of purpose. Today I decide. So I'm going to read it again. And as I read it again, if you feel moved to do so, if a word pops out at you, go ahead and put that in the chat, or maybe write it down next to you and we can talk about it. Today I decide to turn my eyes toward wonder so that I may see the expanse before me. Today I decide to see the possibility of my life so that I may open my mind to greatness. Today I will do one kindness so that my heart may become more loving. Today I will pause to consider so that my life may become more deliberate. Help me, dear God, to step firmly upon a path of consequence so that I may make my life a prayer of goodness and mercy, splendor and light. I ask for a life of meaning, a sense of purpose. Today I decide. Let me hear from you. Oh, I love that you wrote in the today life may become more deliberate, right, Tammy? Totally. Purpose. Today I decide. Would somebody like to share and elaborate on why they wrote what they wrote?
I can do that. So I put purpose.
Uh-huh.
I'm right in the I just retired in September,
Right.
and so I'm at a point right now where it's been wonderful, but I think I'm getting to the point where I need to feel a new sense of purpose. So that's why I put that.
Mm. So that could be if you go in week 1, your week 1 could be about purpose, decision. What do I have to do? What steps do I need to take to feel to recognize a greater sense of purpose or a deeper sense of purpose? That's beautiful. Somebody else like to share?
I chose today I decide because I struggle with being in the present. And I think that just hearing that allows me to say that it's important to be in the present in order to make a decision.
I might have mentioned this last time. It's something, there's an old adage, Daryl, I don't know if you ever say this, but I say it all the time. You teach what you need to learn. So I say this, what I'm about to say, quite a bit, because I guess I need to learn. If you look at the word nowhere, and I'm going to put it in the chat so you can actually see it. You see the word nowhere, but what else do you see in it?
Now here.
Where?
Here.
No.
So that's kind of the decision. Again, powerful spiritual principle of decision. You give you have this choice constantly to have your mind race ahead of you, be anxious about all kinds of things, be very far into the future, and miss being in the present. And when you're too much, and I'm a planner, and a strategist, and I think there's nothing wrong with planning and strategizing, but when you're living too much in advance, you're actually really nowhere. And if you can constantly bring it back to now, here. And I find myself during the Omer so far just saying to myself, that's my choice, that's my decision. Nowhere, now here. Nowhere, now here. And it's a very simple practice to bring your focus back. Now here. Anybody else have a comment about decision?
Well, you liked what I put down, and the occasion was I had transferred to a different school. I was 19, and it was time for me to come out of my shell. And that first day, I went into the dining hall and introduced myself to people. And doing that ever since.
It changed you.
Yeah. As I said, over 60 years ago.
Yep. Yeah.
It did change me.
That's the power of decision.
Yeah. People who knew me when said, you can't be the same Joe Winkle.
And that you must have had an enormous amount of discipline to just decide once, and then that was it. You changed.
It wasn't easy, but it worked. So I kept doing it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
So, Joe, just by you saying that, I just think it means that you had the determination. And I guess that's what we all need to kind of meet that goal, right? We need the determination.
I didn't want to be the wallflower anymore. I was tired of that. And I really wanted to get to know people. And that's what I had to do to get there. So I did it.
Well, maybe tonight that will be that moment for somebody tonight. Tonight I decide.
When it works, you keep doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Something else I wish would work, but I keep going back to old habits.
Well, that's why it's a practice. So to get into the second of the spiritual principles is discernment. Now that you've decided what it is that you would like to change or what it is that you would like to work on, how do you discern what that really means? So for instance, discernment is a practice which sorts out the words, the tendencies, the habit, as you just said, the people, the surroundings. You discern all that noise, what is noise and what is really essential. And you rid yourself of the noise. It's like when you separate the stalk and the grain and the chaff, and you really discern as to what the principle is. I have in my office, actually I could probably show it to you because I'm in my office, something that I always teach with. And again, it was a guiding principle for me. So I know it's probably backwards for you, but still you can see. It says, "Don't look back," and you see a little boy. I always thought it was a little girl, actually, carrying her baggage, which we all do. We carry our baggage wherever we go. Some of it is over her shoulder, and some of it is in the suitcase. And she's at a crossroads, which we all are all the time. And it says, one direction says your life, and the other direction says no longer an option. Your life or no longer an option. And discernment is that. What is it in your life that you want to continue to go to? And what just doesn't work for you anymore? Like Joe's talking, it doesn't work for me to be a wallflower anymore. I'm done. I'm not going to do it any longer. And to continue to redecide once having gotten quiet and discerning, what is life? Another way of putting it is, what is life affirming and what is life draining? So it's the second layer of the decision. Those things that are life draining must fall away, and those things that are life affirming must stay or be included. What gives you energy? What robs you of your energy? Or who completely exhausts you? Like, really? After all these years, and that person's still exhausting you? And who just like gets you, can see you better than you can see yourself. You get up from a conversation energized. Maybe it's not a thing, a what that needs to fall away. Maybe it's a person that needs to fall away. Today, I decide to be more purposeful, kinder, more patient, and yet I need to discern, what do I need to do? What behaviors do I need to have? What ways do I have to think? How do I discern and sort out so that I can choose that which is life affirming as opposed to that which is life draining? See you nodding your head. Does that make sense to all of you? And so here's the prayer. Again, I'll read it twice. So first, just listen, and then you're going to pull out words that might. The dove of silence, I prayed. Be gracious unto me, for I am surrounded by people who wish to consume me. And then came the day when I was most afraid, and I put my trust in you. When I surrender to faith, fear steps aside. I fall silent. What powers do others truly have over my spirit? Peace is like a dove, gracefully soaring, silent, humble in beauty. Help understand my path, to heed the callings of my greatest potential. This is based on the Psalm. And I'll read it again. And the phrase or the word or the picture that pops out at you. The dove of silence, I prayed. Be gracious unto me, for I am surrounded by people who wish to consume me. And then came the day when I was most afraid, and I put my trust in you. When I surrender to faith, fear steps aside. I fall silent. What power do others truly have over my spirit? Peace is like a dove, gracefully soaring, silent, humble in beauty. Help me understand my path, to heed callings of my greatest potential. Help me understand my path. The goal is to reduce the baggage to a tote bag. Anybody else have an idea about discernment? Power over my own spirit.
Can you read it one more time?
I can. The
Thank
dove
you.
of silence, I prayed. Be gracious unto me, for I am surrounded by people who wish to consume me. And then came the day when I was most afraid, and I put my trust in you. When I surrender to faith, fear steps aside, and I fall silent. What power do others truly have over my spirit? Peace is like a dove, gracefully soaring, silent, humble in its beauty. Help me understand my path, to heed the callings of my greatest potential. So as we're doing these exercises, because we're such a small group, we're able to do it this way. I urge you to also make notes for yourself, because the chat will go away. And this can start to become a roadmap for you. You know, what is it that I decide to do? Help me understand my path. You could almost take these words and the words of others. You don't have to only use the ones you came up with. And in that way, create your own prayer or your own poem. Discernment can only be understood if you settle down and take a moment to think. This is when you need to find that chair in the corner of your house with beautiful things around you, maybe a book, maybe a candle, colored pencils, a notebook, or maybe just a view out the window. It doesn't take a long time, but you have to sit and take a breath and just settle in. I often use books beside my table that I do this, and I just randomly open them. And just as we're finding words and phrases now, words and phrases find me. And it doesn't have to be a very active conversation in your mind. It can just be, I surrender to faith. I discern my path. I search for purpose. You just breathe it in for a little while. It helps when it's the same place in your home every time. You can find that little corner in which you can have a moment of quiet. So now that you've decided and you're practicing discernment, the universe is going to say to you, yeah, really? Well, go ahead and choose. Third principle is choose. Choose again, choose again, choose again. Choice is not something that happens once. Choice is something that happens all the time, all the time. And we actually stand 100% of the time in the spiritual principle of choice. We are standing in choice all the time. You think you don't have choice, but you do. You can choose to react or not to react. You can choose to be now here or nowhere. You can choose to find that seat, or you can say, yeah, no, maybe not. You are constantly, constantly choosing, 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 choosing. What are you going to see? What are you going to do? How are you going to react? If a thought comes into your mind that is reinforcing the negative, how do you replace it with a thought that reinforces the positive? Constantly in choice, constantly in choice. And having chosen badly, which you will do periodically throughout the day, choosing to forgive yourself and choosing again to bring back to center. Like, didn't I just say I wasn't going to yell at him? I just said I wasn't going to yell at him. And there you are, yelling at him. And you say, letting that go. I choose again. Practice patience. when you put together those three things, decide who you want to be, discern what you mean that to mean, and choose to act in ways or behave in ways or think in ways that will affirm that will be life affirming. Just those three things put together create an enormous practice. And since you're counting the Omer every day, in week 3, you'll have this week. I get to choose whom I will introduce myself to or whom I will do business with. Samara wrote, when I am surrounding to faith. And I said,
That's just because I can't spell.
that was an auto correct.
I don't know. It was supposed to be surrender. I just can't spell.
But
And I can't choose to be better at that.
and you know what, Mara, if I were saying that I choose to be surrounded by faith, I'd be good with that too. Let's be honest, right? I'd be okay with that.
Yes.
Let me read to you the prayer about choice. Ready? Dearest God, creator of light, you set before me blessing, life, goodness. Guide me, comfort me. Through my longing, gently urge me to find my life's purpose. Like the grasses of the field bend to the wind, I bow, humble. I choose life. Again, dearest God, creator of light, you set before me blessing, life, goodness. Guide me, comfort me. Through my longing, gently urge me to find my life's purpose. Like the grasses of the field bend to the wind, I bow, humble. I choose life.
Can you say more?
You don't have to write, you can talk.
Okay. Can you say more about what you mean about using the word longing there?
I use the word longing a lot. I use the word, when I write, I use the word longing and I use the word yearning. I feel, and no one has ever asked me that question before, Ellen. I feel that so much of my spiritual energy is aspirational. You think of the word aspire, you think of the word inspire, and you think of the word expire. So spire comes from the word spirit. So when you expire, that's how doctors call death. You've expired, your breath. And you know, I'm sure you've learned this over the years from your rabbis, the word for breath and soul are similar, nishama and nishima. So when you expire, you take in your last breath and the spirit has left you. When you inspire or are inspired, the spirit has gone into you. When you aspire, and this is what I mean by longing or yearning, you reach for something. And that motion for me, that reaching, is to bring back and then go into the inspiration. I often think of the image, it's ever since I was a child, I go back to when I was a child, Joe, of how trees grow deeply in the ground, rooted, but the branches grow beyond themselves. And I always thought that it is my aspiration, my yearning, my longing to ever grow beyond myself, closer to the heavens in a metaphorical way. Yeah, go ahead, Lynn. You're muted though.
So I find that what you just said very, very interesting, because I think I always looked at the idea of longing in a negative way, that you long for something, but it's out of reach, as opposed to reaching for it. No, you're helping me. I mean, you've given me another way to look at it. Thank you.
That's interesting, because when you're talking about discernment again, what constructs, what way of seeing the world has worked for me and no longer works for me, right? So that's an interesting belief system that you're being invited by now, by being here. Like, if I say nothing else for the rest of the evening, that invitation to you to say, wait, is what I want to be, who I want to be, what I want to, is it out of my reach? Or can I reach for it? That's a really fascinating question to kind of sit on in your discernment. It's beautiful. Thank you. I guess I talk a lot about humility because I also struggle with arrogance. And I don't think that I really ever believed that anything was really out of my reach. Not always attained, but not because it was out of my reach. I just never believed that, as opposed to the fundamental belief that from a child, that most things are out of your reach.
I would call that self-confident, not arrogant.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know how that goes. I always say that the same personality trait, 3 degrees towards light, is confidence, and the same trait, 3 degrees towards darkness, is arrogance. So when you're doing this self-perfection and you're aspiring, reaching to go beyond yourself, to continue that metaphor, you don't want to get rid of that trait. You just want to put it 3 degrees towards light, as opposed to 3 degrees towards darkness. Because the trait is the trait, it's yours, no judgment. And most of this is learned behavior. And because spiritual principle of choice is in this, we can choose another way. We can choose another way. We have to first decide, discern, choose. Keep going. We doing okay? Okay. So right about now, I figure we need the spiritual principle of hope. And years ago, I decided that the opposite of hope is cynicism. And therefore I choose hope.
Not despair?
I don't think so.
Okay.
For me, the opposite of hope is cynicism. And cynicism is because hope is the belief that it can be okay. There's an old Talmudic phrase, 7 things you're going to be asked once you die. Maybe one of your rabbis have taught it to you before. And I think it's number 3. Number 3 is Tzipita liyeshua, 2 words. Tzipita liyeshua, which basically means, can you envision a time when it's going to be better? Yeshua means salvation. Are you anticipating salvation? Well, I don't know what salvation is, but to me, the emphasis is not on salvation. That's kind of none of my business. That's a God thing. But Tzipita, to envision, to hope for, that's a human thing. That's a human thing. And I can choose hope over cynicism. Oh, you kidding? You can never, whatever, nah, you always, right? Those are cynical words. Whatever, It is what it is. I gave a sermon, I think it was last High Holidays, on never to say it is what it is. That is a cynical phrase, but rather say what is, which brings you back to present and allows space for hope. Years ago, we were driving along the coastal plains of Israel in the hot summer days, and there was a field of sunflowers. And the sunflowers are really kind of ugly, not like the Van Gogh sunflowers. They were very long and scrawny and had very big black eyes, which were the sunflower seeds, which I'm sure you know Israelis like to eat nonstop, and little scrawny thing. And they were flopped over. And I stopped the car and I went out into the field and I looked at these sunflowers and I stood there in the hot 90-degree, dusty Israeli sun of the summer. And the revelation I had was that sunflowers, for us, the sign of hope and beauty, are not sunflowers because of how they look. They're sunflowers because of how they behave. They're always searching the heavens for the sun. And you know that sunflowers do, they'll change and turn. And if somehow I can anticipate a time that it will be okay, then when I go in and do this very difficult work of deciding and choosing and discerning, then I can do so with a sense of optimism. So Joe, you said despair, and in the poem for hope, I use the words despair. Creator of darkness and light, banish my despair. Turn aside my indifference, soften the callousness of my heart. Open my eyes that I may see that beauty abounds, that love abides. Enlighten my life with holiness and grace, as it is written, come, let us walk in the light of God. Creator of darkness and light, banish my despair. Turn aside my indifference, soften the callousness of my heart. Open my eyes, that I may see that beauty abounds and that love abides. Enlighten my life with holiness and grace, as it is written, come, let us walk in the light of God.
What's the last word? Come, let us walk in the light of
God.
God.
From Isaiah. And part of hope, the next spiritual principle here, is imagine. I've announced my retirement, and it'll happen in June 2022. So not this summer, but next summer. And I keep thinking that whatever my last sermon is to the congregation, it will have imagination in it. Because if you can't imagine a brighter self, kinder self, a softer self, then you can't become that self. You really, really have to see the invisible in order to manifest it. We all have to have superpowers in which we can see the invisible, that it is possible to decide what it is that we want, to discern what that actually means, to choose to go for it, to live in hope with our heart that we can achieve it, and to imagine what it looks like, to sit in that corner that I just confiscated from your house, that chair that I've summoned you to, and to sit and imagine yourself, that you can actually see, envision yourself walking softly through this world. It is the power of the blessing of hamotzi over the bread. Blessed are you, O God. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Baruch atah, and blessed are you, O God, ruler of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Well, actually, God does not bring forth bread from the earth. That's actually not true. That is the power of imagination. Every time we go to eat a piece of bread, we activate through blessing that imagination that we can go out into the field, having cultivated it, and take the wheat and work it and turn it into flour and then bake it and then eat it and then affirm that by having a blessing that is based on imagination. I imagine it can be true. It's almost as if it's hope's twin sister. Here's the prayer. Within me, a well deep, filled with cool, abundant water. God, sweet muse of love and loveliness, turn my thoughts towards you, that my eyes may see and my heart may know and my mind may remember that there is beauty in my dreams. Beyond me, a vision, a clear yet winding way. Invisible God, eternal God, God of holiness and wonder, awaken my spirit so that I may envision and behold and make real a universe of light. In the palm of my hand, all things possible. Again. Within me, a well, deep, filled with cool, abundant water. God, sweet muse of love and loveliness, turn my thoughts toward you, that my eyes may see and my heart may know and my mind may remember that there is beauty in my dreams. Beyond me, a vision, a clearing yet winding way. Invisible God, eternal God, God of holiness and wonder, awaken my spirit so that I may envision and behold and make real a universe of light. In the palm of my hand, all things possible. Thoughts? Hedlin.
I think it's not only having faith in God, it's having faith in yourself.
100%. 100%. And when lacking that, to surrender to the mystery.
As there is a great Bruce Springsteen song that says, no retreat, no surrender.
There you go.
So I often think of that, you described a well inside one, and I often think of that as being dark. And I guess in the prayer, it's a well of nourishment or water for providing for the growth of the dreams or something. Is that how you see that?
Yeah, wells are dark. and dark is not always negative.
Mm.
You know, remember in the Hashkivenu prayer we say every night, there's a line that says, "And I long to hide in the shadow of your wings."
Mm. Mm.
So if I'm going to be in a shadow, let it be in the shadow of God's presence, or the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil.
Mm.
That shadow is not a fearful place.
Mm.
Courage. Don't you need a little bit of courage right now? That's the next one. Courage is the next one. It takes courage to become who you always meant to be. No problem, Bonnie. Pop out whenever you need to go. And we're almost done. It takes courage to be who you were always meant to be. It takes courage to become you, to decide and discern. You choose, you imagine, you have hope in your life, and you do so. You walk boldly in this world with great courage. Courage. If anything that this year has taught us is, as I said the last time we were together, how do I become the hero of my life? I want to become a hero. We have been invited to become the heroes of our life, to not give into the despair and the loneliness and the fear, because there has been so much of that. But to imagine and to hope and to decide and to evolve, to iterate. And so I pray that my spirit have strength to soar, and my heart have the courage to seek, and my mind the wisdom to discover a life of meaning and purpose. Grant me, O God, strength, courage, and wisdom. And so I pray that my spirit have the strength to soar, and that my heart have the courage to seek, and my mind the wisdom to discover a life of meaning and purpose. Grant me, O God, strength, courage, and wisdom. And the last of the 7 principles is prayer, but I'm not going to go into prayer right now. It's the one that seems to annoy people the most. I'll have to do I have to do the prayer one another time, because our time is over, and I don't want to just end as people start to go off. And I want to ask you, of all the things that we've said here, can you just share with me one thing that you never thought of before, or that you saw in a different way, or inspired you? Just one thing.
I think that we've been counting the Omar with these issues, these things, this whole pandemic. That we decided how we were going to survive this, and we had to decide over and over again. And we had to discern what we really needed to survive and what should be let go, because during this time it was hard. So I think everything that you talked about today just really kept resonating with me, that we've basically been counting the Omar for 14, 15 months, and that we've all learned things that are really important from that. And the struggle now will be to keep the things that are the most life affirming as we go back into the real world, and don't just accept all of the normal that was before.
Beautiful, Mara. Thank you so much. I think you're right. Though this book was written way before pandemic was even a twinkle in our eye. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I think you put words to some of the things, at least that I've been experiencing. And one of the decisions that I made was, instead of despairing of not being able to do certain things with my kids and grandkids, or even with people I work with, is, wait a minute, let me accept that I can still talk to these people, I can still see these people. Eventually, there will be not simply a light at the end of the tunnel, but we'll be out of the tunnel. And this past Friday night, we actually had Shabbat dinner together in person at one of the kids, and there were 15 of us. Now, if everybody was there who's available, there'd be 20. And that's just that's just the clan. That's without guests. So there were 15 of us, and that was good. First Seder, we had a dozen. And the only reason there weren't 13 was because one of the kids had her second shot. One of my daughters had second shot that day, and she was, getting under the weather. So she dropped off granddaughter and went home. But that was fine. So we're, in that regard, we're pretty much out of the tunnel. They just wouldn't let me hug my 1-year-old, but year and a half old granddaughters.
That too. Will
No,
come.
not yet.
That too will come.
No, but something to look forward to. Enough about me.
Thank you, Joe. No, never enough. Lynn.
Rabbi Kedar,
I think the idea of choice, and I will be honest and say through this pandemic, and I do live alone, and I'm used to being with a lot of people and friends, but I did make a choice to make the best of it and to not let it get me down and to have a good attitude. And I think what's going to be hard for many people is how to choose to re-enter life. Because I am worried about some of my friends who I feel will have a difficult time.
Yep. Reentry is complicated. Rabbi Crystal, did you want to say something?
Well, I was going to draw to a close because I know of your time. Unless there's anyone else that wants to share. Rabbi Kedar, thank you so very, very much. Just an amazing evening for everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This was such a beautiful